and welcome to Mostly Sapphic Books, where I am on a mission to read and review every single book about lesbians. This book I was very, very excited to read. It's by one of my favorite authors lately, Emily Austen. This is her next release, Is This a Cry for Help? I actually got to read a copy of this early, which is super cool. This comes out on January 13th, 2026, and since the book isn't out yet, I will give a spoiler-free review. Although it's kind of hard to spoil an Emily Austen novel because her books aren't necessarily plot-based. There's a lot of internality and emotions, and it's a literary fiction that you don't necessarily read for the plot, although this does have some fun plot elements that keep the story going. They feel less sort of like plot elements and more like external factors in this woman's life. But that's very standard across all of Emily Austen's novels. She has a great voice. If you like any of Emily Austen's other novels, you will like this one. This one was maybe in my top 2, maybe one of my favorites. I'd have to reread Everyone in This Room Will Someday Be Dead again to decide if that one was my favorite or if this one was my favorite, but I really liked this one. So this book is about a lesbian librarian and her various struggles. I suppose the main through line plot of this book is our main character's relationship with her ex-boyfriend, who she discovers is dead. He's died recently, and this has really shaken her up. She had sort of a nervous breakdown, had to take medical leave away from work, and she's just coming back from work. She's started therapy to sort of reconcile with the death of this person who was important to her. So our main character, Darcy, is a lesbian, but when she was 18, she didn't know that yet, and she was dating an older man. He was 10 years older than her. But there's questions about how much of her relationship with him and her memory of her relationship with him is tinted by rose-colored glasses, or the naivete of youth. You know, he was an older man. He was 10 years older, a 28-year-old man dating an 18-year-old girl. He didn't have his life totally together. He wasn't a terrible person. He wasn't an abusive partner. But, you know, they clearly weren't a good couple. But still she felt so drawn to this man, or the idea of this man. There's a lot in this about comphet and the role expected of women in society, and how some people don't realize they're gay because women are just expected to do certain things and perform certain things and act a certain way and, you know, not think about themselves and to people please. And that in her head got conflated with, you know, do I actually want this? Or, you know, does any woman want this? Women complain about their husbands all the time, so clearly I'm not attracted to my boyfriend because, you know, no one's really attracted to their boyfriend, right? So there's a lot of issues with that, struggling with that, and her coming to terms with that, which she has, but maybe not fully, and maybe she's never fully concretely thought about it. But she is at a totally different point in her life now. She's married to a woman. They have a great life. She has a great job she loves, loving relationship, 2 cats, really cute. But still she has this side of her that's hung up on the past. And the expectations of her mother expected her to marry a man and behave a certain way. She feels guilty that she dumped her boyfriend and, like, abandoned him, and then he died sort of young, pretty young, and alone. And she wonders if he killed himself because of her. She feels very guilty, even though they haven't spoken in years. They ended on bad terms. So she's going through this emotionally fraught period in her life. And that is really the crux of the novel, is her coming to terms with her past relationships and who she is now, and how those relationships formed her, but also were negative, but also had their positives, because her life wouldn't have turned out the way it did if she hadn't had them. And, you know, it's emotionally complex, like an Emily Austen novel. There's a lot of great meat there, and it's all very textual. There's not a lot of subtext in this. All of the major themes are pretty blatantly presented on page, which I liked for a lot of the other themes in this novel as well, because she works in a library, and one of the other major through lines of this book is there's a group of protesters who are boycotting the library for having drag story times and promoting the liberal agenda. There's this guy who runs a conservative news outlet, which I'm pretty sure is just a Facebook page that he just set up. He keeps harassing the workers and protesting at the library and, you know, causing a scene, basically, and threatening them. And there's a lot of discussion about book banning that's happening across the United States right now. I think this book takes place in Canada, because the author's Canadian. I'm sure it's probably happening in Canada too. But we get a lot of text, not subtext, it's very textual arguments about book banning and freedom of speech and vocal minorities and how much power they hold and community and perceptions amongst communities and bubbles, because both of these parties think that they're the majority, you know? This guy is convinced that he's saving the children and that the woke librarians are like 5 people who are trying to just poison their community, and that everyone agrees with him, and the librarians are like, you're crazy, everyone agrees with us, this is a library, there's all sorts of books, there's right-wing leaning books, there's conservative books, just as much as there's liberal books, you know? It's a library, it's a place for everyone. So there's a lot of discussion of that, which I think is important for the time and very topical. And I really like the way it's presented. And like the arguments are very straightforward and clear. And I kind of wish some of the people who need to read this would be reading this. They wouldn't be. I think someone of that mindset, if they did read this, they could very easily get into the head of a librarian who's just trying to do her job and isn't trying to push an agenda and is just a normal person, and they'd be able to see things from that perspective. They wouldn't read this. A majority of the people reading this will already agree with Darcy and the libraries because we're reading books. But I really like the way it's presented. This is a very straightforward character. I think we get that with a lot of Emily Austen novels. She has a very direct style, and that really, really fits this character because she's a librarian and she's very organized. The first chapter of this book does a great job setting up the character and also getting you hooked into the world. So we open on a man watching porn in the library and someone complaining about this, which is inevitably eventually what sparks the tirade of the conservative reporters boycotting this place. But technically you're allowed to watch porn in the library, or at least the patrons are in this library. I don't know all the rules. He's not doing anything, he's just watching the videos, which is allowed. And our main character approaches this very sensibly and she's very focused on the rules and following the rules and knowing the rules. And she's approaching the situation very stoically. There's a great section, I can't quote it because it's an arc, so the lines are subject to change. But there's a fantastic section that just shows you what type of character this is. She talks about how she loves categorization, and she's really passionate about putting things in the right categories with the right labels and the right understanding and like making sure everything is organized. And she's watching this man watch lesbian porn, and it's apparently a lesbian cuckold threesome. And she really gets into the semantics. She's like, well, this is like a vintage 70s piece, and gay marriage wasn't legal, and technically a cuckold is when a married man's wife cheats on him, but there's no men, so there can't be a cuckold. And also gay marriage wasn't legal, so none of these people are married, so that's not a cuckold. And also this porn is terrible. I doubt any of these women are lesbians, so it's not really lesbian porn. She's like, wow, the title of this porn is terrible, but whatever, he can watch whatever he wants. And I just think that's such a funny way of telling you something about this character, is that she likes structure and organization and doesn't like to be thrown off her game. And of course, over the course of the book, she realizes that sometimes things are messy, and sometimes the system doesn't quite work, and you have to push the boundaries or change things, which is a good message, and just a fun character to be in, and I think the writing style really fits with that. Again, classic Emily Austen style, but even these lines are very direct and punchy. And this is sort of an introspective novel. It's kind of the way a lot of literary fiction is, but it's not too introspective. We get Darcy's thoughts, we are very close to Darcy, we know what she's thinking, but it's not like too in her head. I've read literary fiction books where like nothing is happening externally and it's just the narrator internalizing everything, just talking in her head. And this book isn't like that. Darcy's not a character who muses forever and overthinks every little thing and like is just too much. She's very direct, and so like we move from thing to thing, the thoughts move from thing to thing, the writing style matches that. You aren't getting these big allegories and metaphors and things like that. It's just direct writing, and it absolutely works for the character, and it's really well done. It's a great voice, it really fits. And that's a funny scene to open a novel on. And it sparks an idea, because, like, I didn't know you could do that in a library. I didn't know anyone would try. But this does talk a lot about libraries and, like, the types of people who need libraries and use libraries, and how, you know, it's more than just kids and people writing research papers. There's people doing their taxes, and people who are homeless, and, you know, people who need help with other things. It's a free community space, and the librarians are intent on helping all of the community. So there's great stuff about libraries here. A librarian would really, really like this book. And it kind of teaches you something. I'm not a librarian. I mean, I kind of knew a lot of this, but it's interesting to see from a librarian's perspective. I don't know if Emily Austen is a librarian or, like, has firsthand experience with that. But, like, this felt like a librarian. Like, I believed that this character was a librarian and knew what she was doing and what she was talking about. So, good verisimilitude with the writing if she's not a librarian. Allegedly. I mean, it felt real. I guess I'm not a librarian, so I can't confirm that, but I'm pretty sure from what I know about library sciences, this felt pretty realistic of a portrayal. Then, of course, we got some other fun side plots going on. We have a quirky coworker who's very nosy. He's a trans guy. He's nice, but he's super nosy, and he doesn't want anyone to think he's nosy, but he's so bad at being subtle. He's trying to pry into Darcy's life and, like, why she had to take medical leave and why she missed the job interview to become a manager. And he's kind of funny. She has some other friends who are funny. Her wife is out of town for a little while because her sister just had a baby. So she's, like, dealing with a lot of this on her own and missing her wife, but still calling her, still in contact with her, and still, you know, keeping up with her and the baby and the sister and all of that. She has a fraught relationship with her mother. There's a mysterious patron who keeps emailing questions about gay birds, which is why I wore this shirt with a bunch of birds on it. That's funny. She's getting threatened by someone mysteriously also via email, and she's trying to solve who that is. There's a stray cat that she has to find a home for. I actually liked that stray cat story, weirdly. I was intrigued by that because it didn't go where I thought it would. There was a real element of realism to that, and to a lot of this book, where it doesn't necessarily feel like everything exists in a fictional novel universe where you know how everything's going to work out. Everything's going to be amazing. Everything's going to wrap up perfectly and get the happiest ending possible. This feels like it's written in our world, or set in our world. And things work out well. This isn't a sad book. There's not a bad ending here. But there's sort of a realistic ending, and not everything works out amazingly. You know, are all of these protesters just going to completely switch sides and suddenly agree that the library should host drag story times every single week? No. It's really slice of life, and really authentic slice of life, and it's really centered around her relationship with her ex-boyfriend. Or not her relationship, but her relationship with the memory of her ex-boyfriend, and what that meant, and what that period of her life meant to her. And that's sort of the bookend of this novel, is her learning to come to terms with that. So again, it's an emotional plot rather than a plot. And so the plot elements, the external plot elements, they all get wrapped up. There's no loose ends here, but they end in, like, realistic ways that just feel like things that would actually happen, even if they're not, like, perfect. But they're good enough, and, like, that's real, and it feels real. And I think that's the draw of an Emily Austen book. She's great at writing characters. She's great at getting you in the head of someone else, even if a lot of her characters are kind of the same, but it's good. I enjoy it every time, so, like, I'm fine with that. It just feels real. It's good literary fiction where you really see our world represented in a realistic manner, and you see real life issues very blatantly addressed and very realistically handled and resolved. And it's just nice. It's just a good read. It's sort of introspective, but not even just with the characters. Like, it makes you think about things as well. So yeah, just another good Emily Austen novel. One of my favorite authors right now. This is her 4th book. I've read all of them. They're all great. I think, yeah, this is, like, my top 2. I really like this character. I like the idea of a librarian. I liked this more than We Can Be Rats, for sure. That one was my least favorite. I still liked it. That was a 4-star book. But I'm glad we're back to another 5-star Emily Austen book. So I'm excited to see what she does next, and I'm kind of sad that I read this early because now I have to wait even longer for her next book. But maybe I'll get to read that one early. I'd be fine with that. Yeah, I definitely recommend checking this one out, even though the cover kind of looks like a self-help book. And the title, the title doesn't help that, does it? Is this a cry for help? It does look like a self-help book cover. It does say a novel on it, but in really small font, so I could see someone seeing this in the shop and being like, that's a self-help book. Why is that in the fiction section? I don't think any of her covers are, like, fantastic, to be honest. I liked the paperback covers of Everyone in This Room Will Someday Be Dead and Interesting Facts About Space. I liked how they were related. I actually didn't, like, love the cover for Everyone in This Room Will Someday Be Dead. Great book, though. Like, you should still buy it. Interesting Facts About Space, the paperback cover was a little better. I just thought it was more interesting. I don't know. They're kind of boring covers. I like the pink of We Could Be Rats, but I don't know. I don't know why I'm talking about the cover. The cover doesn't matter. The book's good. Just read the book. Comes out January 13th. Probably one of the best books of 2026. Very early to say that. It is August of 2025 right now when I'm recording this, so I don't know what's going to come out next year. But hopefully more great books like this. So I'll see you then.